Hello, welcome back to Cinema Convos. This is the show where we talk about different topics in film and talking about the art of cinema. I'm your host, Yash, and I'm here with my co host, Zach. We're also here with our special guest, Max, who was our first guest on Cinema Convos ever.
He's
And
back.
He's back.
Yeah, I
finally.
remember that.
And today we're discussing the topic of the art of the dumb comedies from the early 2000s, roughly, let's say 1998 to like 2005, and how those comedies have aged today and how they hold a special place in Max's heart. And yeah, that's kind of our plan for today. So we don't really have like a question in mind, but
We're just
I
gonna
guess-
talk about
I guess what makes a comedy great, Max, for you?
I mean, so talking about these films, I have kind of not really a guilty pleasure, but I guess a guilty pleasure with these movies. Because they are very dumb and just kind of goofy, I guess, but that's why I kind of enjoy them. So I mean, they don't really have to have like a plot or like a much of a story to be funny to me. So I think just a movie in general that's a comedy just
Yeah.
has to be funny and entertaining to me to be,
Yeah.
a good comedy.
I mean, there's definitely that brand of comedy from that era where
Yeah.
like I feel like it's almost similar to how the nostalgia we feel for it is special because like we're all like, older 20s now, and we're kind of seeing those as the movies that came out when you were younger, or like growing into adolescence. I think that's why we also think very fondly of like the music of that time. And that's why like our friend is having an early 2000s themed birthday party. Shout out Spencer.
Go Spencer,
Happy
yeah.
birthday. And that's a fair point because a lot of these comedies, I'll tell you up front, like they don't have great reviews. And watching them kind of taught me that you shouldn't trust like critical reviews for like a comedy movie because comedy is subjective. If something's funny to you, like who cares if critics don't like it?
Exactly, yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like I sort of know the type of comedy that kind of Max has in mind here. When I think of the comedy that, he likes, it's this kind of stuff. The way I see it, it's like late 90s. So, Dude, Where's My Car? American Pie.
Classics.
Not all of them stoner comedies, but some like college humor, those kind of like high school, college party movies. And I would say it ends at the rise of Apatow, Judd Apatow.
Yeah. The Apatow wave kind of changed comedy, that the movies were still hilarious, but they very much were trying to be about people or like things people can relate to, themes. Whereas like, Dude, Where's My Car? It's just these like two idiots who like are looking for their car.
Yeah.
And hey, you could say stuff like American Pie has a shred of realism, maybe a little bit of like, or maybe what you wish high school was like. But stuff like 40-Year-Old Virgin, stuff like that, have a shred of humanity. And
Yeah.
that's the stuff that these kind of dumb comedies, nothing against them, but they just don't have that. And that's just kind of what makes them. They're almost a little bit, dare I say, almost like fantastical in a way.
Yeah. I mean, the Judd Apatow factory, I would say, rolls out more of on the dramedy side than true comedy. Like they're funny, but like there is like a heartfelt story at the center of all of them. And for the movies we're really focusing on, it's not required to have like a heartfelt story. I would say American Pie has like a coming of age element,
Yeah,
for
I
sure,
would
with like a
say.
central plot. But what we remember is that it's about a guy who has sex with a pie. Like it's like stuff like that.
Yeah.
That is, so I think.
Yeah, I would say like with that series, the whole like American Pie, because there are several. There's like just
There's a
the
bunch of
American
spin-offs.
Pie, and then there's the spin-offs as well. I
Yeah.
mean, I enjoy some of the spin-offs. I think the newest one with like I don't even know.
The one on Netflix.
Yeah.
That one was
I don't-
terrible.
Yeah, that one was awful.
No, wait, what is that? Was that an American
It's called
Reunion?
Girls Rules. No,
Yeah,
American
Girls-
Reunion's good.
Yeah, those are good. But like they had of the spin-off ones was like the Naked Mile, the
Yeah,
There's another
there's like a whole series like American Pie Presents.
Band camp.
And it's like
one of them.
it features like supporting characters from American Pie, but it's
Okay.
not like I haven't seen any of them, but I've seen the main four.
Yeah.
So my experience with these movies, with specifically the American Pie Presents. So when I was an adolescent, Comedy Central used to show movies at 2 a.m. on Saturday
Oh,
nights.
yeah.
When
I remember watching some of those.
when I was in high school, I was an insomniac. I couldn't sleep, on weekend nights, and I'd watch. They'd have dumb comedies, some good comedies, some I'd say not so good. And one of those was American Pie Presents The Naked Mile. And I wouldn't say I have a soft spot in my heart for it, but I remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's movies like those that like they are dumb comedies, and like looking back, like of course they're gonna have terrible like critic reviews, but like yeah, it has a soft spot in your heart. And you're
Yeah.
just like, I enjoy this. Like I don't
Yeah,
care
and-
who, what they think of it, but I like it.
With the phrase dumb comedy, we're not trying to insinuate that like, oh, these movies are like for dumb people. We're saying like the nature of the comedy is silly and like goofy, and that's
Yeah.
why it's funny to us. So I think that's why it's special. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wanted to ask you, Max, what would you say is your earliest experience of like discovering these kind of comedy movies, and like what are some of the movies that really drew you in initially?
So I would say, similar to Zach, I guess. I did watch some of these comedies like late at night on Comedy Central or, wherever else there was. Probably the first couple ones that I watched was, I think Harold and Kumar, like Go to
Classic.
White Castle. Like that was a classic movie for me. Like I've grown to love White Castle. It's funny, my mom even like knows that I love that movie so much. It's just, I don't know. It's a
And we
part
went to White Castle.
Yeah, we went to
That was
White Castle.
special. We
Yeah,
actually did go to.
That happened one time.
It's a part of me, honestly, that movie. But yeah, so that was kind of the start of it, and then just discovering more and more of like goofy comedies like that. And I remember I'd go to like what's that movie store? The
Movie trading
Blockbuster.
company.
Yeah, movie
Oh,
trading
movie.
company. So I'd go there and I'd just like browse the movies, and it's like any dumb movie that like looked interesting to me, I'd usually like get and like watch. Like another one that I watched early on was like Van Wilder. I think that was a really funny one for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Just going off of that, as I have a funny story about Harold and Kumar. I didn't see the Harold and Kumar movies until very recently, like a few years ago. I wasn't really allowed to watch like R-rated movies, and I didn't break the rules often. I wish I did. I was missing out because like I was at a friend's birthday party, and this was his, I want to say 15th birthday party, 2011 maybe. And the new Harold and Kumar was in theaters, and they were all gonna go see it. And I was like, oh no, I can't watch that movie. I definitely killed the vibe. I'm like, how are we gonna get in? We're not 17. Like, don't worry about that. We have ways. But also those same friends, and this is a tangent, but they got escorted out of 21 Jump Street.
Oh
We're not
my
17. And they got in trouble. It was pretty funny. So I'm like, maybe it's good I wasn't with them.
That's funny. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, all those movies are great. I mean, some of them are like stoner comedies that I love.
Mhm.
It's like Harold and Kumar, Half Baked is another one. I think those like
And the brilliance of Harold and Kumar is that it just takes full ownership of like Asian and Indian stereotypes. And like as an Indian person watching them, I think it's so funny that he's like taking the MCAT and stuff, like trying to become a doctor. Like, it's just like it really just leans into it. And I know there's like maybe more of a conversation about like is this offensive? But I think if they made a Harold and Kumar movie today, like people would line up to watch it.
oh no,
So-
yeah,
Sure
for
they
sure.
would.
I don't think it's like a problem for
Yeah.
most people.
Because they stopped it like it was the Christmas one, right?
The
There was
Christmas
last
one, which I love the Christmas Harold
It was
Kumar.
fun.
That one is
Yeah.
actually a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I didn't see it in the theater, but I did.
They had a lot of
Yeah.
fun with the 3D gimmick in that one.
Yeah,
Yeah, they did a lot of fun with that.
for sure.
What was the like Waffle Bot?
Oh, the Waffle Bot,
The
yeah.
Waffle Bot in
I
that
think the
movie?
Waffle Bot, yep.
That's pretty
Yeah.
funny. That's a great one.
Yeah, I would say these movies are just like downright just fun. Like they
Yeah.
don't need to have a purpose or like a
Yeah, I mean they know they're silly. Like
Yeah.
in Harold and Kumar Go to Guantanamo Bay, they smoke weed with George Bush at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was a scene. Oh my
It's
god.
just like, who came up with this? But this is
That's
hilarious.
incredible.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
for sure.
Um,
Imagine if they did that with like Trump or something, like a modern day.
that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
That's I wonder if they would ever. Well, probably not them, but like it'd be great if they maybe sometime, because you know how now they're bringing back all these new, or they're bringing back these old franchises that you're really thinking, who asked for this? Like they're bringing back like Twister and like
Yeah.
Beetlejuice and stuff.
But Twister's went hard.
Yeah, but
But I see what you're saying.
maybe in like 10 years they'll bring back Harold and Kumar when they're 50 or something,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
people will ask, who asked for this? But then there'll be those people.
Me, I did.
Who did ask
Yeah.
for this?
Then there's the people who were like us.
Yeah,
We
us.
asked for this,
Yeah.
and our requests have been answered.
Yeah. I mean, if there's an audience, they'll make it. Like
Yeah.
that's for sure.
I just hope like if they do make another Harold and Kumar movie, like it will be good. Like I know some like they do try and make like older movies like that, but like they just kind of fall flat.
It's hard to recreate like make lightning strike twice, as
Yeah.
they say, right? Like
Yeah.
once you have a hit, making a sequel is already pretty hard, and they made two pretty solid sequels, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, I think White Castle is the best movie of the three, but I like the other two.
Oh,
And
no, yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
it's a fun. I mean, I think I have a Harold and Kumar set. Like, it's all three of them.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So like, I just watched all of them. I'm pretty sure I watched them during COVID. Actually, that was a nice bright spot
Okay.
during COVID. But my whole thing with comedy is, I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten more to appreciate like if it's like a well-written joke and how it's woven into the story. Like two of my favorite comedies are probably Superbad and Mean Girls. I just think they have really good storylines underneath, but like they keep me laughing consistently. Probably The Hangover as well. The Hangover is
Yeah,
great.
those are good, yeah.
I think The Hangover has very much like dumb comedy energy, but it's like in a later era.
Yeah.
That's an interesting kind of topic we could kind of talk about a little bit. Is
Yeah.
like, because okay, I think we acknowledge like we think of this era that we kind of define the lines as starting in 98 and ending with Apatow, but shades of it continued on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and definitely the strongest example of that is The Hangover.
Yeah.
Do we think The Hangover is a more, it's funny, I think of it, and I don't know, I have no basis for this. I think of it as more of a, how do I put, highbrow film than like something like
I
Dude,
mean-
Where's My Car or American Pie. And it's about a bunch of guys and a bachelor
Who like roofie
trip
themselves?
who roofied themselves on a bachelor trip in Vegas, and I think of it as a higher quality film.
I mean,
Now,
it
the
is
question is like,
Golden
why
Globe
do I
nominated.
not Golden Globe
Winning,
nominated? Golden
winning,
Globe winning.
winning.
It won Best Musical or Comedy at the 2009 Golden Globes. Which,
Yeah.
besides that, why do I think it's higher caliber? What about it makes me think that?
Similarly, I feel like I feel the same way about Tropic Thunder.
So what
Like
do you
it's
think?
dumb, but like it's so smart at the same time.
The argument I can make for Tropic Thunder, and
Yeah.
maybe The Hangover's here the same way.
Mhm.
Budget.
But yeah,
Budget is everything. Tropic Thunder, the whole premise of it is making a high budget action war film, and you got to have somewhat of a similar budget to make
Yeah.
that realistic. You
Yeah.
can't make like, hey, let's make it believable that you're making a Vietnam film and have it be on like, a budget of a couple $1 million. It's going to be your worst graphics, and it's not going to work. So with that case, maybe it's budget. I don't know. Maybe it's sensibility. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say also like with the budget. So like you said the budget of Hangover.
Yeah.
Like, so if the production value is higher than like Dude, Where's My Car, like American Pie, is that why you think that it's more of a higher quality movie?
It just I feel like they usually like what's interesting is I think they just get bigger budgets and they make like crazier things happen in the movie, I guess.
Yeah.
Like the premise can revolve around something more like I don't even know what the word I'm looking for. Like I feel like a lot of times those silly comedies we're referring to, like from the earlier days, a lot of the humor comes from the characters just being kind of dumb, like or like unaware of like things that are happening, and that makes it kind of fun to
Yeah.
watch. Whereas I think in those modern comedies, there's often like I'm saying modern, but these movies are also like over 10 years old. But like they're it's showing like normal characters being thrown in situations that are like outrageous.
Yeah.
Like and super bad, like they think their friend gets arrested, they have to get alcohol for the party. But the three guys are like characters, but they're not like total like morons.
Right.
And like the guys in The Hangover, like they only get in a situation because of one of them. Because of
right,
Alec.
yeah.
So like I think it's just like putting these like quote unquote normal people in outrageous situations versus like the characters in the older movies are just kind of silly. Like Harold and Kumar are like stoners.
Yeah.
True. Now there is some, Harold and Kumar, to certain elements. We talk about Harold and Kumar. I mean, if there's a straight man in the Harold and Kumar kind of dynamic, it's Harold. I mean, he's the one
Yeah.
who kind of is, and Kumar is the one who's. I mean, they're both getting into
A
shenanigans.
bit more unhinged than
Yeah.
There's always a bit more
yeah.
unhinged.
There's always like the
and
stiffler.
that's-
Yeah. It's
Like,
like, yeah.
but it's
causes
hard.
chaos.
But that's different to call that a normal person. Yeah, he's the least unhinged of the two. It's kind of a like Dumb and Dumber situation where there's a dumb and there's a dumber, but they're both freaking dumb.
Right.
With Superbad, listen, I think a film like Superbad, yeah, they do all feel like normal people. That's the shred of humanity that Apatow and stuff brings.
Yeah.
Also, and with that, I think the writing
Mhm.
is the big difference because
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm being controversial in saying American Pie, really, the screenplay of American Pie isn't any sort of crowning achievement.
Yeah.
But something like Superbad,
Yeah.
40-Year-Old Virgin, even The Hangover, pretty solid script
Yeah.
because they write these characters really well.
And you want to see what happens to these characters. You know, you're more invested, I think. Like they set the stage, the groundwork so well to where you're more invested. Like when I'm watching a movie with like silly characters, like I want to see what happens to them, but I'm not necessarily like rooting for them. Like I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, like maybe they'll find their car, maybe they won't. You know, like I don't
Maybe they'll find their car, maybe they won't, yeah.
you know.
I think the theme that like persists without like through all these movies is there's always like a good like dynamic of friends
yeah.
that like gets into like these situations, and so that's
Yeah.
what's kind of like fun to watch also with them. I mean the other movies do have
I mean, I feel like the classic combo is just like having one friend who's more introverted, one more extroverted, and
Yeah.
just making them like best friends.
Yeah.
That's like Harold and Kumar, you know, super bad. Even Dude, Where's My Car to an extent. Like the two characters clash in their personalities in some ways, and one gets them into trouble most of the time, right? And then
right, yeah.
it just evolves from there.
Mm-hmm. Like also just sort of a related question that I had. So is like the friendship element, is that something that draws you to these movies? Is that something that keeps you coming back? Like what are the qualities besides it just being funny? What are the qualities that keeps you coming back to these types of movies?
I mean, yeah, I would say like the friendship dynamic between the characters, just like how the characters kind of get through the situations, and then majority of it is just like what's the next weirdest thing or wackiest thing that happens to them in this movie. So it's kind of honestly like a roller coaster ride of like what's gonna happen next. Like,
And these movies tend to be shorter and they're not too long, so like they move pretty fast. Like I think a good comedy is well paced, unlike fast movie.
yeah,
Like
Yeah,
it sets
no-
the stage quickly, gives you the main conflict, and you just go from there.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. None of them are like a lot of good ones are not above like 2.5 hours. Like they're
I think
screwed.
the relatability comes from like, for me at least, whenever I see like, you know, a quiet or like awkward character being thrown into a crazy situation, like I think it's very relatable. Like when Michael Cera is like forced to sing at that party, like I think that's hysterical because I'm like, I would hate to do that. Like you're the guy who sings, you're
Yeah.
Jimmy's brother, and he's just like, just like singing, and they're like, yeah, let him go.
Yeah.
So I think like seeing myself in characters helps.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's why I think Superbad's like I've always been drawn to Superbad because I think it captures like a crazy friend group dynamic so well, and it also shows Michael Cera's character who I feel like the most connected to, I guess. But like we all know like a Jonah Hill type who was just
Yeah.
unhinged,
Right.
you know, like
Yeah.
so like you know it's just like I think the relatability comes from that.
Mhm.
It's not really about like I know a big qualm people have with just high school movies in general, especially older ones, that they all look old. But
Right.
I think that doesn't really matter if they capture the essence of what it is to be young.
True.
You can overlook that. Like The Breakfast Club is one of my favorite movies, and they all look like 35.
Yeah.
but it's a great movie. It's a great story. So you just
Yeah.
kind of forget that they're like a little bit older.
Mhm.
Right. With those, there's a lot of like good coming of age stories. I
Yeah.
mean, even though it's goofy and just a silly comedy movie,
Yeah.
I think a lot of those like early 2000s like teen movies have a good like coming of age movie.
Yeah.
And like, usually the main character ends up winning in the end or
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
the,
We
situation is.
like having a positive ending, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's good because it just makes us feel happy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So moving on, Max, I wanted to ask you, can you give us like just a list of 10 movies that you feel are like that really encapsulate this form of comedy and that you love? Like these are this is the must watch list for you.
Yeah, so my top 10 list of this kind of whole genre that we're discussing, start in no particular order. Starting off with Dude, Where's My Car, Van Wilder, the American Pie series, that kind of encapsulates all of them. The New Guy, Harold and Kumar, all of them. The To-Do List, Half Baked,
Mhm.
Biodome, Super Trooper, and Smiley Face, which I recently saw.
So it looks like I have a lot of films to watch. I've seen Dude, Where's My Car, Harold and Kumar, and American Pie, but we've already touched pretty heavily on two of those. I've heard about a lot of these, and you know, I definitely think I should watch them with you, honestly, at some point.
Yeah,
But
no, I love that.
I know recently I saw Dude, Where's My Car, and I texted you guys about it. I'm like, hey, have you guys seen this? I'm watching it for the first time. I think you guys also watched it or rewatched it around the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I know that us talking about that movie kind of sparked this whole idea, I think, for this episode.
Yeah.
But I thought that was like like I had just a fun time watching that. My friend Sam wanted to watch it, and he said like, "So you're," he was just like, "Prepare for real cinema," and then and then it started. It says based on a true story.
Based on a true story, yeah.
I was like, "Oh boy, this will be," and I had a good time. Like it wasn't even my type of movie necessarily, but like I I was laughing pretty consistently. I'm like, and knowing that Max loves this makes it even better, just because like it's so funny. But it's a movie that delivers what it promises. You know, that's
Yeah.
always nice.
Absolutely.
I remember I showed this to Zach, and his remark to the movie was, "This is the dumbest movie ever. I had a blast," and that just kind of sums up the movie.
That sums up the movie.
That is true. It's a dumb movie, but the damn is it fun. It is a fun. There's so many, like, me and Max talking after it, during it. We just kept quoting lines back and forth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Just
yeah, it's a very
What is-
quotable movie. Like all these
so much-
movies are just very quotable. They'll have just like one-liners that just kind of stick in your head forever. At least to me, like
yeah. You will never deliver pizza in this town again. It's
yeah,
it's a dumb line, but for some reason there's like the pizza. Okay, so the two guys are like, they also deliver pizzas as their job, and also a dumb part is like they stole a bunch of pizzas from their work, and then they try to hide it. So what do? They throw them up on the ceiling, and then they hope they don't fall down. Of course, they keep falling down, so they gotta distract the pizza guy. But hey, look over there! And then he finds out they're stealing pizzas, and he's like, if I found out you stole pizzas, you're never delivering pizza in this town again. And I lost it at that because it's such a dumb line, but it's so funny, dude. It's so funny.
It's such a silly movie, and it's so self-aware of it, and it's interesting because like comedies at that time were just inherently silly, I think. But that one, even watching it now, you can almost feel like almost a satirical feeling to it. Like it can work on different levels. I wouldn't say it's like a masterpiece, but it's a fun time.
yeah.
Like if you want to watch a dumb movie with your friends and have a good time,
Yeah.
put in Dude, Where's My Car?
Exactly.
Here's the thing. We talk about, I think you had talked about earlier when we were talking about this earlier, Yash, stuff like, what's it, Legally Blonde, Office Space.
Yeah.
These movies that have a point because they're
so over the
specific-
top, but they're over the top for a reason.
specifically
Yeah.
satirical. Well, what separates those movies from a movie like Dude, Where's My Car, which could be some hyper esoteric kind of version of this satire. Maybe it's a satire on dumb comedies itself.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's so dumb it's a satire on dumbness.
Yeah.
That's sometimes what I
And I believe there's a comedy movie called Y2K coming out that takes place like around this time. And I just feel like there's potential there to like have callbacks like movies from this era. I don't know how it's gonna be. I haven't seen it yet because
Oh, that sounds good.
but that sounds
Check
like a
that
fun
out.
time just to revisit that era with like the actors of today.
Yeah,
I
right.
think like Rachel Zegler's in it.
Interesting.
Like and she was probably like born after 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say it's weird watching this movie, remembering that time, and starring actors who don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of Dude, Where's My Car? I think Sean William Scott was like kind of the darling of this genre at the time.
Yes.
I feel like with American Pie,
Yeah.
being Stifler, and
Yes. Yep.
just every time you saw him, you knew you were in for something absurdly silly, and that was perfect.
Yeah.
So I think it's cool that he kind of made that his brand.
Yeah. He played Stifler well.
Yeah, Stifler's a great character. I mean, he's
Stifler is a great
unhinged.
character.
He's that unhinged character that every comedy movie like this needs.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I'd argue that most of the American Pie cast is pretty crazy and weird.
Yeah.
But there's
I mean, just the whole plot of like, let's plan to lose our virginity, like
yeah, I mean
prom, like
it created that like stereotype for that genre, right?
right.
That's the mission, like
But-
hook up with someone at prom
Yeah.
before we go to college.
Yeah.
The plot is so simple, though. The plot is
It's so
like,
simple.
a bunch of people have thought of this plot. It's a very simple one.
But it creates that twist by adding the pie and the raunchiness,
Yes.
like,
Yeah, the
absolutely.
raunchiness,
It was-
I think, like it was kind of the first of its time, or like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
it-
there's stuff before
I mean,
that, but,
American
like,
Pie. I would say there's some movies that are just like pioneers of like certain time, like,
Yeah.
like American Pie, pioneers.
Pioneers.
American
Pioneers.
That's what the fifth one should be called, American Pioneers. But like American Pie almost revolutionized like the R-rated comedy for the
yeah,
time.
they
Oh.
kind of pushed the boundaries of like what was
Because
Mhm.
until then, the
Accepted.
high school comedies weren't that raunchy, as far as I
No.
know.
Yeah.
There were some, especially in the 80s. What
The
was the
80s,
one?
some of the 80s ones were.
So
yeah.
I never saw it. Maybe you saw it, Max. Corky's.
I have not seen that, but I've heard of it. I heard it's a very raunchy, like, just. I've heard there's some scenes in that movie, and just yeah.
I've never seen it, but I've heard the stories of like, if we're talking about that was the raunchiest comedy of its time for a while.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that.
And that was
yeah.
and you had other 80s comedies like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Fast Times at
Yeah,
Ridgemont
that's
High,
all-
which I think we could argue in a way, and even shades of films like Caddyshack and stuff
Mhm.
like that. There were some maybe late 70s, early 80s, National Lampoon's Vacation, stuff like
Yeah,
this.
so that's kind of the beginning, I guess.
Films like this, obviously different era, 15, 20 years ahead. But just like there's shades of dumb comedies made in 2017, or shades of this and dumb comedies made then, there's shades of this era made in movies made in 1980.
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
there's
yeah.
a continuum. But I think we can argue that this concentrated level of dumbness to the point of satire peaked at the turn of the millennium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think American Pie would, I mean, a lot of the R-rated comedies from this era, they did rely on like gross out or shock humor.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
that
it
was, I
was.
guess, more prevalent. Like
Yeah.
puking or like, like pooping, farting, like, having diarrhea, like these kind of things were just in these movies,
Yeah.
right? Like that's just like there's always like at least one joke centering around like bodily fluids in
Yeah.
all of these films.
Yeah.
And I always hate watching that, especially people puking. I don't like watching it on screen at all. But I think that's an interesting trend. Like it's the toilet humor we criticize like kids movies for having. Like every movie that's for kids that's animated will have like a fart joke in the trailer. Because
Yeah.
that's like gonna like the kids will be like, it's funny. And like we probably thought that was funny when we were younger too, but we probably thought it was funny when you were older too, because some of these comedies have similar humor.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I recently saw a film which I wouldn't call a silly comedy, but it was almost exclusively like puking and pooping for humor. It's called Sasquatch Sunset, which I hated. But you got good reviews. Maybe I'm missing something, but I thought it was awful. And I wrote my letterbox review. It's like if the fart joke from a kid's movie trailer played nonstop for an hour and a half. And that's it.
Yeah.
So I think even you guys are talking about some scene in Van Wilder a second ago. What are some funny scenes where like stuff like that happens? People are
So,
pooping their pants.
Let's
Yeah,
talk about it.
Going into that scene, kind of the context of that scene is Van Wilder. So there's, if you don't know the kind of gist of Van Wilder, it's he's in college for like I think 7 years or something. It just isn't really wanting to graduate. So it's him and then this girl he likes and then her boyfriend, which is he's kind of just a tool.
Yeah.
And he's taking
Who's
like,
the actor in the film, by the way, if you want to say who the actor is?
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah,
Is Van
Ryan
Wilder.
Reynolds, who's a giant star
Giant
now,
success, yeah.
started doing stuff like this.
Small indie actor Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah. Small nobody turns into, Deadpool. So basically he's taken like I think he's trying to be a doctor or something. I don't even remember, but he's like taking the test or whatever.
An MCAT or something.
Yeah, and
One of the
MCAT.
most difficult exams.
MCAT, LSAT.
And before he like goes, I guess I think
It
his
was his-
girlfriend
yeah,
like gives him a
girlfriend.
shake or something, like a protein shake,
Oh no.
but puts laxative in it.
I have a tie-in for this. which
And
is
so
gonna sound super strange.
he's doing the test, and throughout the test, like his stomach just is churning, and like you're hearing all these like farting sounds, and like he has to go to the bathroom, and so he's doing his test, and like he's scrolling through the answer or like just scribbling through the answers, and like gets up ready to like run out the door, and then he I think like runs upstairs. I don't even remember. And like one of the professors stops him, is like, "Hey, like all your professors are here. Like come meet them." And yeah, again, he still has to go to the bathroom. So what he does is he goes over to a trash can
Oh no.
and just goes to the bathroom right in front of all these people.
Yeah, like the
And-
pooping in weird
Oh,
locations
God.
makes it so
Yeah.
much worse.
And it's part of that shock humor too, because like
Yeah.
in the 80s, like you couldn't show stuff like this.
Yeah.
And in the late 2010s, I don't think anyone cares because it's been done so much. So
Yeah.
people were just able to show shock humor, and they're like, okay, well then we're gonna freaking show shock humor. Let's get our fill.
Yeah.
There's a scene, and this isn't even a raunchy comedy, but there's a scene in the Robin Williams movie RV where
Oh,
where
yes.
he
Yeah,
gets
yeah.
just covered in shit.
Yep.
And that's like it's probably the first time I've cursed on this podcast, and it's just like disgusting.
Yeah.
But like that kind of thing was prevalent in that era, I feel like.
Yeah.
Uh,
'cause he-
underrated movie. I grew up watching it.
I actually really like that movie. Yeah.
I haven't seen RV since I was a kid, honestly.
But what else was I going to say? Oh, so the laxatives and protein shake was literally a plot point in the newest season of Cobra Kai, which came out like last week,
Really.
Wow.
which is crazy. That's why it's wild to me.
That's funny. Yeah.
Anyways, not to spoil Cobra Kai for you guys.
I was gonna watch it.
I mean, it's an outstanding show, and it's interesting. It comes up because Cobra Kai works because it knows it's a sequel to like a cheesy '80s franchise, and
Yeah.
it captures the same tone. So I feel like when they make sequels to these like beloved comedy movies, you gotta have the same energy and like the same vibe, and you might not be able to recreate it.
Yeah.
I mean, they remade Mean Girls, the musical version this year, and it's good, I think.
It's different. I think
Does it capture the magic of the original? No. And I don't think you can recreate that.
Yeah.
It's lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, for
Exactly.
sure. Other movie I would say, like there's a classic of mine is Biodome. I don't know if you've seen
I
that.
haven't seen Bio.
so.
Okay.
I will provide a little bit of color on this, and I think Max and it. So when Max and I were in high school, our friend group, him and a couple of our other friends, would always quote Biodome all the time,
Yeah.
and we just quote quotes from it. I think they showed it to me. I thought it was the stupidest movie. I didn't get it. I didn't like it. I thought it was dumb. I saw it later, I think, gosh, a couple of years ago. I saw it like with you, like 4th of July or something. And I still don't think it's a masterpiece, but I get it. I
Yeah.
get the,
Yeah.
I can understand the appeal. I
Yeah.
still don't think it's great, but I get it now.
I mean, it's kind of like my journey with the other guys. I didn't like that movie at first, but my one of my friends, Alice, who's been on the podcast to talk about the other guys before, he showed me the brilliance of it, and I think the other guys captures the same like nonsense humor.
Mhm.
Like those two guys jumping to their death is like a similar energy to a lot of these dumb comedies.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Something we're going on a tangent. I think movies like the other guys are in a completely different category.
Okay, yeah,
It's
fair.
almost slapsticky. Like slapstick, like I think of that as a spiritual cousin or successor to Naked Gun series.
Yeah, that's a good.
Which-
good.
It's a series that beats you over the head with the jokes to the point that you can't stop laughing. It is rapid fire joke, 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 joke. And that's
Yeah.
kind of the point of those, which I love that stuff, but
Which we
it's
could do a whole
different.
episode on like the evolution of spoof comedy and how it used to be like this brilliant thing.
Spoof comedy is that way, which this is
Yeah.
that basically is a spoof comedy. The other guys,
Yeah.
so I said it's spoof comedy. A lot of
Yeah.
that is.
But the Naked Gun is like overtly a spoof comedy.
Oh, it's very much
Yeah.
sometimes I'd love to do an episode on just the Naked Gun. We talk about with the other
Okay.
guys, but like that's all 3 Naked Guns.
They're funny.
There's like just
Those are good. Yeah.
there's little
Which is great.
Yeah.
Airplane.
Airplane's funny.
and okay, this is not the episode on those, or else we would talk about its history from Airplane all the way to the Scary Movie franchise. But no, I think different category, but no, there's sometimes you just don't get it at first, these kind of movies, but there is something to appreciate it even if you don't see it.
Yeah. Like at the end of the day, like if a movie's funny to you, like just enjoy it. Don't worry about what anyone else thinks. Like comedy is subjective. I think comedy and horror are the most subjective genres. And I think that every movie should be taken as a unique experience. Like don't go into it like this got bad reviews, this got great reviews. I've seen movies with great reviews that I don't like at all. What's the movie I saw? I saw an Indian movie this week that was a quote unquote comedy. I didn't laugh once.
Bad news.
It's called, I don't want to say it, but Bad News. Bad news is bad news, fellas. But Good News is a decent movie. It's from the makers of Good News. I don't want to slander that movie.
I would say like last movies I want to talk about, touch on, are just kind of dumb, like stoner comedies. I know we briefly touched on like Harold and Kumar. That's pretty good.
Right.
But also like Half Baked was another funny one that I enjoyed.
Haven't seen that
so
one yet.
good.
With Dave
Funny.
Chappelle. He's pretty.
Oh, I love Dave Chappelle though. I
Dave
gotta watch
Chappelle's
it.
in that, and it was really good. So I like that. And then a recent one I saw was Smiley Face. I don't know if you've seen it. or
I've
not.
never
I've
heard of
heard of
Smiley-
that one.
I've never heard of
I think
Smiley
I've seen it on
Face.
Yeah,
Letterboxd.
I haven't seen it or like really heard of it. I saw it on I think Amazon the other day. I'm like, oh, I'll check this out.
Nice.
That was like one of the funniest movies that like has no plot, but like she's obviously stoned throughout the movie, and it's Anna Faris is the main
I've
character.
heard of this movie.
Yeah. So
I've-
she's like stoned throughout the whole movie, and like it's the most I feel like accurate like depiction of someone being stoned in like a stoner comedy.
Yeah.
Because just like how she acts and like what happens throughout the movie is just like so like vague, but like doesn't it like literally doesn't have a plot.
Yeah.
But like it just comes together as just this weird like this is just her days just being stoned.
Yeah. I definitely evaluate comedies by like, is this movie trying to make me laugh like consistently, or does it just have some funny parts like woven in there?
Yeah.
Or like, if is it a movie that's actively trying to make me laugh or get a reaction out of me? And I think most comedies fit that definition. But there are some comedies that ride the line of being a dramedy because they're so serious. Like
Yeah.
last night we all watched 50-50, one of my favorite movies. And that's a drama with comedy in it.
Yeah,
But the
absolutely.
comedy in it is hysterical.
Yeah,
It has me
that was
like
a
rolling
funny-
on the floor
yeah.
laughing. But it's not a comedy movie because it's very like sad and like
Yeah.
bleak stuff in there.
Which for that stuff, that's the Apatow effect.
That's the appetite effect for sure.
40-year-old virgin to funny people, underrated movie. I
Yeah,
mean,
underrated movie.
I've
for
never
sure. That's a
seen
good
that,
movie.
it's great. Knocked Up all the way to not Apatow directly, but stuff like 50-50
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I know we've said it before, but Apatow changed the game.
And a lot of those Apatow movies, I think I didn't really like them when I was like younger. I like them more now. Like they've really grown on me as I've gotten older because I appreciate a lot of the themes and storytelling in it. Because like the movie, like I didn't think Knocked Up was that good of a movie when I first saw it, but now I love it. I think it's hilarious and it has a right balance of like drama and comedy, and I think Apatow just balances it well in all of his movies. Like the comedies is woven into this dramatic story.
Yeah. I need to definitely go back and rewatch all those.
Yeah.
Because
I
I mean,
think he was a producer on
yeah.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which I know you've watched that as well.
yeah, I recently watched that.
But it's a similar, that's a similar movie, like in the terms
Yeah.
of vibes.
Yeah, like the plot is very sad. Like he, loses his girlfriend,
Yes.
and then he like takes a trip and just
meets Mila Kunis.
wackiness.
That's the movie.
that's the savior of the movie.
That's a wonderful movie that we've
No,
talked about on the show.
Yeah, that was one of our earlier episodes,
Right.
episodes actually.
Shout out Paul.
But yeah, that's really my top 10 list, I would say.
I actually have a question. I have a question for Max, and for all of us, really.
Okay.
So I really would be curious if you can think of one. What is the scene that the first time you saw it made you laugh the hardest that you can remember?
Oh, that's a tough one.
And you can think about it for a bit if you want. I have one in mind.
Yeah, Zach, what do you have?
Oh God, I need time. Are talking about from these movies?
Just in general, in any comedy movie.
Oh my gosh, in any God, jeez, what a
See it.
So it's hard to pick just one, but one memory I do have is the first time I saw This Is the End, and James Franco and Danny McBride are arguing about like the work and like he's like who masturbated on my magazine. I was like in complete like tears laughing. I was laughing so hard. That's one that I can think of for film. And for television, I watched I watched all of Key and Peele recently, and the skit where Jordan is just like a human baby, and he's like I want milk, mommy. I was just like laughing like uncontrollably. Like it was so bad. So those are two things that come to mind from recent that make me laugh though, even when I watch them now.
See,
gosh.
I would say the thing for me is like really it's not really like a particular scene, but like
Yeah.
if I find something hilarious, like I'll sit there and laugh forever
Yeah.
with like about it. Like the scene like I watched the Smiley Face movie recently,
Mhm.
and there was a scene where like she's running like she has like a job interview or something, and so she's running into the building and she gets to the elevator and there's like a security guard there.
Yeah.
And mind you, she's like high as a kite. She turns around and like is like huffing hysterically or like trying to catch her breath. And I don't know why I thought that was funny, but like I laughed about it for like 5 minutes. I thought it was the funniest, like she had the funniest like look on her face. And I'm like, I can't handle this.
I'm really trying to think of a scene. I think I probably do have one. And this leads into another question I have, but Step Brothers, which is probably one of my favorite
Yeah.
comedies.
That goes to
and
the silly genre. I feel
So
like.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask my question now because I think it's relevant. Do these movies just categorize them Will Ferrell films, Step Brothers, Talladega Nights, Anchorman? Do these qualify here?
I think that the Adam McKay Will Ferrell Factory does have a lot of those movies have a lot of silly elements, but they kind of ride the line between like silliness and satire.
I agree.
Like they're almost so satirical that they're almost like intelligent for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like Anchorman, even like those kind of movies.
So
Like, would you categorize Adam Sandler movies in the same category?
good
That's
question.
a whole other
Really?
Yeah.
See, thinking of that's actually really thinking about this. I didn't even think about Adam Sandler movies.
Yeah.
I think maybe, and a lot of this is perception, folks. I think it's like I don't think about this as like I think of Adam Sandler as his own thing.
Yeah, I would say the same. At least Will Ferrell, Adam Sandler, I would say those are his kind of a subgenre of this, but like it's its own thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he started before, but like he was definitely doing movies in this
I
era.
mean, those are two actors who made their name in comedy. Like
Yeah.
that's what they're primarily known for.
Mhm.
They've had some dramatic outings, of course, but when you think of an Adam Sandler or a Will Ferrell comedy, something specific comes to mind.
Yeah,
Same for like maybe even like, if you go further back, like a Jim Carrey comedy.
yeah,
That's
Like
true.
there's a
That's
certain
whole
element of there's a style of acting and humor that you just relate
Mhm.
to when you hear about one of those actors. I feel.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I actually watched Billy Madison like the other day for the first time.
I actually haven't seen that one. I just saw Happy Gilmore for the first time, which I heard
Yeah.
there's a Happy Gilmore sequel in the works,
I haven't seen that either.
which is
but-
crazy.
Yeah,
What I will say is, yeah. So talking about the dumb comedy scene that made me laugh the most, I think it is from a Will Ferrell film, Step Brothers.
Mhm.
The one where Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly's characters they're in a treehouse, and then Adam Scott's character comes up. It's like you want to hit me in the face? Go ahead, hit me in the face. And he just socks him one in the face, and then go ahead, hit me in the face, and he just hits him in the face, and he falls out of the treehouse. That's maybe the thing I haven't been laughed harder in a movie scene,
Yeah.
ever.
There's always those scenes that you watch them and you're just dying laughing, and those are always special.
Yeah. As much as I love the Will Ferrell movies, you can make an argument we're talking about satire. Anchorman is a satire of, 70s, that kind of newscaster, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a faux period piece kind of thing. And I'll honestly, even a satire of those kind of things.
Yeah.
Talladega Nights is a satire of NASCAR and NASCAR movies.
Oh yeah.
What is Step Brothers a satire of? If it's not, is it just like this?
I think Step Brothers falls into the dumb comedy vein more
Yeah.
than satire. Like it's
I
it's
agree.
about two man children
Yeah.
who like don't grow up.
yeah,
As much as it's funny, I think of it as more of a high-minded film, but that's misplaced, in my opinion, because
Yeah, no,
I think of that just because of the people that are in it.
yeah.
No other reason.
It's funny because when Step Brothers was introduced to me, like it was pitched to me as like one of the funniest movies ever to exist. So it already like had this high expectation. And I think I didn't like it that much the first time I watched it. I'm like, this is just kind of dumb. But like as I've grown to appreciate the dumb comedy like subgenre, I've grown to like Step Brothers more. So I
Yeah.
think it just comes down to like expectations.
yeah. And that's the beauty of these movies is like you don't have to have high expectations to enjoy them.
No.
They're just fun, dumb comedies.
Fun dumb comedies, absolutely. What is a movie that's so like you've already said, kind of smiley face was made in 07. I think
Yeah.
that's your ending point there. But like, what movies that were made, let's say the past 10 years, 8 years, recently that have shades of this genre? Can you think of movies made relatively recently that have shades of this sort of aura?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's hard because all those movies like are so like in their own genre. So yeah, I would say like, Step Brothers or like all those kind of movies are kind of that genre. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that would go into that.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Zach? What you?
So I have one in mind, and I've talked about it. We haven't had an episode on the podcast of it, but I've talked about it on the podcast before.
I have a movie in mind.
Like Good Boys.
Oh, I was
Good-
thinking of a
okay,
different one, but
yeah,
Good Boys
yeah.
is great.
That's a good one.
I think both Good Boys and Booksmart capture a silliness. They blend a silliness with also like a super bad element, like with
Yeah.
the friendship.
Mm-hmm. I might argue I might argue. I think Good Boys is trying to be a,
Yeah,
super bad clone. I say in quotation marks, but
but
it-
middle schoolers.
yes,
so it's,
yeah,
so it's like different.
it's 12-year-olds, which, I think I'd said earlier that shock humor is harder to come by nowadays when everything's been done. But if you can do it with 12-year-olds, whole other element. And also, it does have a lot of the same human element that Superbad has, but I think there's more goofiness to it. There's more goofiness just because it's kids.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
You were gonna say something about Booksmart?
Yeah, I think Booksmart has like a good blend of like it has like that Apatow feeling with this dramatic storyline, but it also has like a lot of silly jokes and like funny moments. One of my favorite comedies of the last few years. But a movie I just remembered that I actually want to highlight is the movie Bottoms from last year.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah,
I
that was
think
great.
Bottoms captures the like absurdism very well for
Yeah.
like this kind of
Okay,
comedy.
yeah,
Like,
I would have to go with that.
and I thought it was hilarious.
that was a really
It's,
good film. I enjoyed that a lot.
Part of me wonders if Bottoms belongs in the same category as the other guys or Naked Gun.
It might. I mean, it has like a spoof vibe to it.
It definitely has spoof vibes, but it's kind of its own thing. Listen, it's got sparks of that. It's got sparks of this.
Yeah.
It's got sparks of Apatow.
Mhm.
I think it
It's
is such a blend.
it has a blend of a lot of different things, and that's why I think it felt so like refreshing and new to watch it,
Yeah.
because it was just such a fun movie that like if you think about it, like the stakes are not that high until like the end,
Yeah.
and then it just becomes like crazy, and then you're like, this is not a movie that's trying to like be realistic in any way.
yeah.
Like it's just a wacky, fun comedy that also has like some heart like underneath, but it never forgets how silly it is
yeah.
throughout the movie. Which I think is awesome. It's the best comedy last year. Underrated movie.
Yeah,
honestly.
I
Not enough people talk
I
about it.
completely forgot about that movie. Yeah, that was a really good movie. At first, like the beginning of it, like it was a little slow to get into for me at least,
Mhm.
and then it really picked up like in the middle, and then the end was just just that blend
Yeah.
of
Just
them.
pure, just pure fun.
That last scene on the football field.
Oh my
I
god!
cannot recommend Bottoms enough. Just
Yeah,
a
if you
great
haven't
movie.
seen it, please go watch it.
So wrapping things up with one last question for Max is, if you had to convince someone who, let's say this person is not really familiar with like this silly comedy, like the brilliance of it, right? And you
Yeah.
have to convince them to watch like a Dude, Where's My Car or like a Harold and Kumar or an American Pie. How would you convince them to watch it? What would your sales pitch look like?
Honestly, with these movies, I would say they're fun with a group of friends. Is a really good way to introduce someone to
And a
these
few
movies.
bevs.
Yeah, and a few beverages for sure. But like that's honestly like Biodome. We watched it in high school,
Mhm.
and that was just us with a bunch of friends. Just we had that on the back. It's almost like some of these movies are like background movies, background noise.
Yeah.
But honestly, yeah, that would be a great way to introduce someone because you're just hanging out with your friends and just watching this goofy movie, and you can laugh about it together. So I mean, yeah, I mean, I watch these movies sometimes alone, which I find humor in just these movies. But yeah, I would say definitely watch it with a group of really good friends.
For sure.
I definitely think these movies, yeah, like if you like this type of humor, you can definitely, find something out of it. But even if you don't, like, I wouldn't say these movies specifically are like my favorite type of comedy. But what I will say is when I watch them with like any group of friends,
Mhm.
just watching it with more people makes it infinitely that much better.
And I think in general, and with comedy, it's better to watch it with people. You're more inclined to laugh out loud, and like seeing other people laugh will make you laugh.
Yeah.
I think when I watch movies alone, I'm not as inclined to laugh out loud unless it's genuinely that funny.
Yeah,
For
Yeah,
sure.
like if I had seen I talked about Good Boys, stuff like that. I loved that movie because I
Nice.
watched it in a full theater of people laughing their head
Yeah,
off.
I watched it in theater with you. It was great.
I love Dude, Where My Car because I watched it with Max, who loves it, and it was cracking me up by laughing so much that I laughed too, and at it. And it was really like, so these comedies, maybe, some of the love for these comedies are the friends we watch it with.
The experiences we have watching it with friends.
Yeah,
exactly,
that's what
yeah.
maybe the real experience are the friends that we made along the way.
Truer words
Exactly.
have not been spoken.
Exactly.
Okay, we have reached the end of today's discussion on the art of the dumb and silly comedy. I want to thank Max for joining us.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you, and we'll always love to have you again on the show. And we'd like to give all of you listening a big thanks. And if you enjoy our show, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel or leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Stay up to date with new episodes by giving us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter/X, and support our show by checking out our available merch linked in all of our social media. And we hope you tune in next time.